On February 1st, Janet Yellen takes the helm as chairwoman of the Federal Reserve, becoming arguably the most powerful woman in the free world. Her decisions will move markets around the globe and impact the pocketbooks of ordinary Americans. At 67, she's the first woman to lead the central bank in its 100-year history. Now, change at the top of the Fed is rare, with only 2 chairmen in the past 25 years. And Yellen takes over at a critical time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
From the moment she was nominated,
the nomination is confirmed.
Yellen took on the responsibility of guiding the U.S. economy at one of its most challenging times in history.
She doesn't have a crystal ball, but what she does have is a keen understanding about how markets and the economy work.
Born and bred in Brooklyn, Yellen learned early on about the workings of the economy from her parents, who told her about their struggles during the Depression. Her interest in economics took her to Yale University, where she studied with the best. Her 2 mentors were Nobel Prize winners. Even her husband is a Nobel laureate.
She's extraordinarily well-rounded for this position.
Yellen served on President Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors, and for 6 years was president of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. Since 2010, she's been the second most powerful voice at the Fed after Ben Bernanke, as vice chair of the central bank's board of governors.
I often found that I would go to Janet when I didn't know it, she did.
Now, as chairwoman, Yellen faces the daunting task of unwinding the Fed's massive economic stimulus, the controversial bond buying program initiated by Bernanke.
I would agree that this program cannot continue forever.
But now comes the hard part. Yellen must oversee what Wall Street calls the taper. Taper too much of those bond purchases, and too fast, the economy could choke. Taper too slowly, it could fuel inflation, one of Wall Street's biggest worries. Another challenge? Yellen's policy moves also need to promote job growth. Hiring has picked up and the unemployment rate is coming down, but not fast enough to encourage a dramatic change in business and consumer spending.
My colleagues and I are acutely aware of how much workers have lost in the past 5 years.
But perhaps Yellen's toughest task will be to clearly explain this new chapter of Fed policies to investors, lawmakers, and to the American public. How well she communicates her vision could dictate the future and success of the world's largest economy.
Our country has come a long way since the dark days of the financial crisis, but we have farther to go.
And joining us now is Bob Brusca. He's chief economist of Fact and Opinion Economics. Mr. Brusca, welcome. How different do you think Janet Yellen's Fed will be from Ben Bernanke's?
Well, I don't think that her way of operating is going to seem very different to many people. Part of it is that Bernanke had this opportunity to help the economy grow, and his lessons from the Great Depression told him that he should be easy. And I think Janet she's not going to be an easy money person, but she's going to try to help the economy a little bit more. That's her ideology.
Yeah, she certainly has to help the economy, Bob. I mean, you know, as you look back in Federal Reserve history and you look at various moments of crisis and what the Fed chiefs focused on, you know, Volcker focused on inflation. Bernanke, it was stabilizing the economy. When we're going to look on the tenure of Janet Yellen, what's it going to be?
Well, I think she's going to manage the transition. We're no longer in a period where we think the economy is slipping back in recession or we're going to have deflation. Those risks are still there, but we're also starting to grow, and we're worried a little bit more about whether the size of the Fed's balance sheet or other things will bring inflation around. Now, I don't think those risks are on the table for this year, but those will be coming in the second and maybe third years of her administration, and those are things she's going to have to deal with.
How difficult a trick is it going to be for her to dial back on the stimulus that has been in the system for several years now?
Well, that's going to depend on the economy. You know, if the economy performs well, she won't find dialing back very difficult. But if the economy isn't performing, then I think she's going to find that dial is stubborn and hard to move.
You know, Bob, Wall Street has very strong opinions of the various Fed chiefs. How do you think Wall Street is going to respond to Janet Yellen?
I think they're going to respond well. She's been in the Fed, at the Fed. She's been in the public eye for so long. She's not an unknown quantity. And I think that she's a very good economist. She's been a good leader. And I think that she's going to have Wall Street warm up to her pretty quickly.
And you get Janet Yellen and a Nobel Prize winner, too, right under the same roof, her husband. So it's an interesting thing. How influential has he been with her?
Well, I don't know any personal details, but clearly they've worked together. They've written papers together, and she's a fine economist in her own right. She's certainly lucky to have a husband with such an expertise, but I think that Janet holds her own water.
I'm sure she does. Bob Brusca, thank you very much. Bob is chief economist of Fact and Opinion Economics.